There's so much opportunities region that I think people need to be just open to it, invest in it, and reap the benefits of it. I would rather like outsource this work to an agent while I focus on something that only I can do. So move along the value curve, get more into that strategic work, get more into like innovation with suppliers. I think everybody should see these things as an augmentation of what, and it's fast, right? And that's the issue. It's not that a human cannot do it. It takes a long time. So if you have hundreds and thousands, why not use an AI or some technology to kind of get to what you want quickly? Because none of us want to spend time on non-value added work, right? How do we move away from being a firefighter to kind of being more of a fire prevention and more of a strategic advisor is where the opportunity is.
Welcome to the AI in Procurement podcast. I'm your host, Srijan Kumar, the CEO of Lighthouz AI. I'm excited to take you all on a journey with me as I talk to world leaders in procurement about how AI, generative AI, and agentic AI are transforming procurement, and how organizations and leaders like yourself can make the most out of this revolutionary technology. Today, I'm excited to host TR Kannan on the podcast. TR has been a transformative procurement leader with over 20 years of experience in the biopharma and manufacturing sectors. He specializes in procurement strategy, operations, and the entire source-to-pay lifecycle. He has led procurement operations in some of the world's leading companies like Baxter, the Chemours Company, CSL Behring, Bristol-Myers Squibb, and Merck. He drives procurement excellence, has deep expertise in successfully setting up complex procurement functions across multiple countries, and has driven innovation while ensuring compliance in these highly regulated industries. This podcast is hosted by Lighthouz AI. Lighthouz is a Y Combinator-backed startup building AI agents for procurement excellence. I had a fantastic time talking to TR, and I hope you all enjoyed this episode. TR, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you, Srijan.
Great. I'd love to kick things off by asking you how you got started in procurement.
That's a great story, right? I mean, like most people, I also kind of fell into it. But there's a little bit of strategy behind it. My background as an engineer and my interest in IT always led me to work in impactful roles and impactful functions. And as I was doing that, I really saw an opportunity around contract management, vendor management, and procurement, because the kind of things we are able to do there touches the entire organization. And I think that's what really excited me to kind of get into it. And I saw an opportunity at one of my pharmaceutical companies to kind of step into it, and I just jumped on it. And I'm pretty happy that I did.
That's amazing. I've talked to so many procurement professionals, and everyone has a very unique and interesting story behind how they got started in it. So I'll just kick things off by asking this question. So you were nominated as an AI champion in procurement, and you have always, in our previous conversations as well, you mentioned that you've always been very tech forward in procurement. So I'd love to know, in your experience, how have not just broad technology, but specifically data analytics, AI, and let's say generative AI, how have they changed procurement practices in your experience?
I'll address it in a few ways, Srijan. I think one is what I've seen in the organizations I was part of and where I was able to influence. I can also talk about what's possible that I'm hearing and seeing in other places. Great. And there's a big difference between those two, honestly, because not every company is ready. As they say, the future is here, it's not evenly distributed, right? So some companies are much ahead than the others, but at least in the ones, and I can explain why I see that also depends on the kind of company, the size of the company, the vision of the company, and the investments they're willing to make, right? But some of this basic stuff I've seen, and I've always been that proponent of like, hey, let's start trying this out, let's innovate, let's be creative before things became much more mainstream and popular. So things like agents and chatbots was something several years ago, I would say almost 5 years ago, we're trying to implement in the organization I was in, because my team was getting a lot of questions by people internal to the organization and thousands of suppliers that we deal with. And we're spending a lot of human time on unnecessarily answering those kinds of things. And we said, why don't we introduce this agent who can help in that case, right? we did it to an extent, but then very quickly realized is the underlying infrastructure was not ready. So some company like Microsoft is ahead, right? So you have Teams, you can add a Teams agent, great. But if the same agent cannot get back to the source of the data, either because the data is not good or the company is scared about opening up the data to an AI agent, I think that limits on how far you can take it. So those are some of the constraints I saw, but I've seen other products and other organizations who are much more ahead and are able to really take advantage of these technologies.
Yeah, I would love to hear a couple of thoughts on from you on how can a company become AI ready, since you have seen it from so many different perspectives as well whenever you get around to it.
Yeah, I think companies are already like starting to create these AI-based policies, right? I think depend on the kind of industry you're in, or whether it's a regulated industry or not, whether it's a big company or a small company. Is it a new startup or is it like a 100-year-old company? So all those factors into it, because the people, there's still issues around trust, there's still issues around adoption, there's still issues about legality and privacy. So all of that you got to put together, and every company approaches those aspects very, very differently. So those are the things, and I think you have to really put it all together and say, what do you want to do? What is your vision, right? And it's usually driven from the top. So I think that's what you need to start with.
So if you were to give advice to a procurement leader or a organizational leader listening to this podcast right now, what is, let's say, a AI project that in procurement specifically that they can get started with, where in your experience you have seen a lot of impact being delivered with relatively less ROI, relatively high ROI with relatively less effort?
Yeah, I would say a few things. That I think being in procurement, access to data analytics, specifically about your vendors and about your spend, is going to be critical. I mean, that's like table stakes. And believe it or not, people still struggle with that. Even it's 2025 now, right? So it's still a challenge, which is mind-boggling. Today, several people will talk about data quality issues, and I don't trust what this so-and-so system is telling us. So I would just start there, because if you don't have that, I think everything else just becomes harder to do. So how do you get access to quality data? How do you even use AI to kind of clean your data? We were able to successfully do that in one of my previous roles, where people were exactly telling me that, oh, I don't believe the data, because now data is not something that just got created, right? So it's been in existence for a long time, and different people have created it. So it's been used differently, abused differently. So how do you put all of that together? And everybody used to say that was an issue. And we said, well, let's solve that issue. So we actually use technology and AI to kind of map the spend to the right kind of category. Because that was the biggest issue people had, saying, hey, I don't know if the spend is related to hardware or software or services or some other material. And because people picked whatever they picked when they were creating that data element. And I've seen it time and time again that people end up picking the first item in the drop down sometimes because they just want to get through that screen. Yeah. And that leads to these situations. So we were actually able to use an AI engine that categorized it, saying, well, Microsoft doesn't sell janitorial services, so there's an issue here, and how do we fix that? So that's a pretty good outcome we got. We were able to categorize the data in correct buckets, which led to people trusting what some of the outcomes was being shared. Because now as a procurement professional, you can take that to your stakeholders, to your different business functions, and say, hey, the president of so-and-so organization, this is where your spend is. This is in this category with this supplier. And then you can start coming up with your roadmap on where you want to add value.
That's amazing. That sounds like such an exciting project to do, specifically if you did it internally and you probably saved $200,000 instead of like spending on a third-party vendor to do it. So spend categorization definitely is a huge pain point that companies have. And now AI-based solutions are out there that can definitely help solve some of these. I'd love to know from you if you have some other examples from your career, from your direct experience, or something you have heard of, where AI is impacting procurement and supply chain and others.
Yeah, I mean, contract management comes to mind. I mean, there's a lot of unstructured data. Right? In the previous example was kind of structured data records, but not good data. In this case, it's unstructured data, right? So, I mean, there's like blobs of information in these documents, and those documents could be lying anywhere. how do you quickly take it out, put it in a fashion, and then you can answer those questions, right? I mean, I personally, even like a few weeks ago, was trying to ask my team, like, hey, what do we have? Who do we have a contract with? What does that say? And it takes time to kind of figure that out. I think that's a use case that I've been seeing and watching closely, where you can really collect a lot of data and it's fast, right? And that's the issue. It's not that a human cannot do it, it takes a long time. So if you have hundreds and thousands, why not use an AI or some technology to kind of get to what you want quickly? Because none of us wants to spend time on non-value added work, right? Like you should be spending time once you get the result, not collecting the results.
Absolutely. Unstructured data is a huge issue. And now AI, and specifically AI agents, are perfect to solve not just understanding of these contracts and unstructured documents, but in our experience, do a lot of value-added derivative work from it. For example, understanding contract compliance, whether invoices, let's say, comply with contracts or not. That's a huge use case that is coming up. And now AI agents become the perfect application for that.
I'm pretty confident, and I've actually seen it, that there's so much leakage that's happening because of lack of the compliance. I've seen situations where, in both cases, right, you overpay, you underpay, because every contract is written differently, and freight charges comes to mind. Like I've seen that also, like, like who's in charge of paying for it? Is it included in the price? Is it excluded from the price? If it's excluded, are you shipping? Am I shipping? There's so much going on that people just are not able to keep up.
Absolutely, 100% agreed. So what trends are you seeing, given that you've been in procurement for such a long time? What future trends are you seeing where generative AI agents will shape in the next 5 years of procurement?
Oh, there's so many, right? I think the future is bright. I mean, I can't wait to reimagine the art of the possible in the space, and you can cut through every taxonomy of the entire source to pay space. We talked briefly about spend and contracting, but if I pick category management or even like sourcing, right? I mean, let's say you want to create an RFP. I mean, why should that be a tedious process, right? Can AI agents build RFPs, send RFPs, find suppliers, and even like do the first read of the responses and populate a next set of actions, right? I think that's a huge opportunity there. I think like things are on reordering points. There was an article like I couldn't get my hand on like today. I was trying to find it for this conversation. Uh, one of the big consulting companies put an article out about something like autonomous sourcing, right? They said, imagine a scenario when like you're in a lab, you're an R&D scientist, and you're going to be running out of some key supplies. But before you know that, can an AI or technology figure that out for you? Go to market, so to speak, find the right supplier, and get the products to you delivered. Now, seems like we're talking about the future, but that article was written about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very interesting that like where we are in this journey. I mean, like AI is not that new, right? But things like ChatGPT and other guys made it more mainstream right now, because the concept machine learning existed for how many years now? But I think the accessibility to it it's cheaper, it's faster, with the cloud that has come into place. I think that's what's going to happen. And even in the purchasing side too, right? Let's say you're trying to place an order. Like we see this, and that's one of the biggest pet peeve I have is we see a lot of these benefits in our personal lives. But suddenly when you log into your work environment, you take like steps back, right? So think about it, shopping, right? You're trying to shop for anything, and whether it's with an Amazon or outside, and it tells you, hey, here's a alternative product, or here's a coupon for you, or it's a better price here.
Yeah.
Imagine if that happens when you're in your purchasing platform within an organization, right? Saying, hey, you shouldn't be buying from this because it's a better alternative, or there's a high risk situation because of whatever reasons. I think there's so much opportunity, Srijan, that I think people need to be just open to it, invest in it, and reap the benefits of it.
Yeah, I think these are all great points. I think one of the hesitations that comes up very often is, hey, it's yet another new tool or yet another new platform that we have to get IT involved in implementing and pay for. And like it's just these bureaucratic hurdles and logistical hurdles prevent, in my experience, prevent the procurement world or business side of things to move as quickly as the AI adoption in personal life has been. I don't know, is that something that you have seen in your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely, right. So depend again back to the maturity of an organization. So think about evolution. You watch a company and see, does the company just have a CIO for IT? Or sometimes some companies have a CISO for security. Some companies have a data officer or an analytics officer, right? And some people add AI to one of those, right? So depending on how they're structured and how where the focus is, I think either the bureaucracy is easy or hard, right? Depending on how many people are involved and what their thought process is. But you're right. But what I'm also seeing is people, again, depending on the visionary leaders, they're more open to it, to kind of, because IT, like procurement, right? IT is another function that needs to partner with the rest of the organization, and several IT leaders are open to making that case, and I think that's helpful. So the more and more you see that's going to make everybody's life really easy, I would say.
So what can a procurement leader do if they, let's say, want to implement an AI or a tech project? What can they do to help coordinate better with their IT or the data or analytics or AI leaders to get these projects up and running as quickly as possible?
In every role I've been, the CIO or an equivalent role has been my best friend, right? So I really need that individual to kind of partner with you. I think I would just, if you don't have that good relationship, start doing that very, very quickly. I think that's going to be the first one, I would say. And parallelly, right? I mean, just avoid any unnecessary issues, partner with your legal department or privacy and those guys to make sure they are also on board on what you want to do. So that's from the alignment across the board standpoint. But another important part, Srijan, is internal, right? That whole, we got to make these solutions people centric. I've seen time and time again where we fail at adoption and change management because people are used to old ways of doing it. And this is a very recent example. I was watching somebody on a smartphone, right? So they have a smartphone, and I asked them, hey, do you have, I forget what it was, like this app on your phone? And this individual was like scrolling through pages and like trying to find it, spend like a lot of time. And I said, you can just search for it, right? So, but again, people are used to the ways of how they used to always work. So you got to change that mindset, saying, hey, you got to do this differently now, not do what you used to do before, you're not flipping pages and pages every time. So I think that working through that, I think is also going to be equally important.
Absolutely. I think, and to add to that, I think it's at all levels, all the way from a buyer through the chief procurement officer and everyone else in that in between needs to be on board and needs to be part of that change management process. Uh, so as AI becomes more prevalent in the day-to-day work life of a procurement professional, how do you see that? How do you see their role changing or evolving across the board? Across all levels, let's say.
I think that you got to see, I think everybody should see these things as an augmentation of what we all do, right? So that way, I would rather like outsource this work to an agent while I focus on something that only I can do. So move along that value curve, get more into that strategic work, get more into like innovation with suppliers, get more involved in your business and business partnering. And we are so like today procurement, like you wait for your business partners to come and say what you need. Why don't we get more proactive, understand with them? There's a very innovative idea we had which didn't fully materialize, but we said, hey, what if you from the sales side, I from the procurement side, go and talk to our customer and to see what they want and what their needs are, what their concerns are, and on the back end do the same with our supplier. So if you can connect that entire value chain from our customer to our supplier, that's something you can actually make so much improvements in strategically.
I love that. Yeah, I think like bringing all the stakeholders, not just internal but external, together. Um, and you can do that now if you do outsource all your tactical work to AI agents. You get more time to think more strategically. I love that. So how can companies now best prepare to leverage AI in their procurement processes, TR?
I think acceptance is going to be important, right? I mean, change that mindset from at all levels and make sure that you want to be a digital world-class organization. Start there, upskill people, We ran in one of my roles, we ran like because I owned the process excellence and knowledge management. So we ran like a 7-week course teaching people on like really good digital tools. And but some people really picked up on it and some struggled, right? And at the end of the whole thing, I asked back and said, hey, what do you want us to do next? Right? Because I was hoping to get to the next level of education. And believe it or not, many people came and asked us, can we teach them advanced Excel? So it was a little bit of a shock, but again, that's something you don't know, right? I mean, you don't know where people are, so you got to meet them where they are. So if we want to teach them advanced Excel and pivot tables and VLOOKUPs, talking to them about something else, about something else is going to be really challenging. So that everybody's in a different stage in their journey. So, but you got to like work through that. That's what I'll say. I'm trying to put together a formal training program for procurement, but that's what I want to our companies to look at next. What do you want, right? I mean, because people could be at a second grade level or 8th grade level or whatever for each one of those areas, and get them all up to the right level first.
No, yeah, I think that's such an important point. Just like in any, to create any successful program, you need to understand who you are serving with that program. I think that particular learning is quite valuable. So in a world where many people are still in advanced Excel spreadsheet functionality, how do you think leadership like yourself can get them to advance from that to using AI?
Lead by example, right? I mean, like I always do that. I always take opportunity to share with people what's out there, how are each one of us able to use it. Because if you can't just be preaching if you don't believe it in yourself and start using it. So when they start seeing that, like when your equivalents of your chat GPT, because many companies have created their own internal versions of it, and not a lot of people by default go there, right? And say, hey, I'm having a problem. What if I just interact with that tool to kind of get me out there? I started doing that by default now. So how do you kind of like take that as your extension and like almost you're asking yourself, but through the tool. And I think that's how you got to do it. Like you got to start showing people, and then when they see enough and build that kind of momentum, I think everybody will start picking it up.
Yeah, leading by example, love it. To wrap up in a few minutes, TR, I was curious, what excites you the most about the future of procurement?
I mean, it's such an important function in an organization, right? I mean, but it's not. I think the branding needs to improve for procurement. When you look at any company, right, equivalent functions are your IT, your legal, your finance, and HR, and so on. But procurement has always been called upon for either, hey, I need to save money, or I'm having supply risks, right? So I think we want to take that to the next level of evolution, where, as I said, how do we start doing maybe some innovation with our suppliers? Where do we bring AI to kind of help us in what we do? How do we partner better with our internal businesses? I think all of those things is what excites me. How can we be more predictive? Right? I mean, all the problems are like, hey, I can't, I have the sports strike, right? So I can't get my product in, or the Panama Canal is is closed. So how can you start predicting some of those things, and whether it's that or even forecasting certain items and being prepared with those plans? How do we move away from being a firefighter to kind of being more of a fire prevention and more of a strategic advisor is where the opportunity is.
Oh, I love that. That's a very important aspect to think about. In all my conversations, and I read a lot about procurement online as well, this theme of changing the branding or changing the perception of procurement has recently started to emerge quite a lot. And I think it's a very timely thing to be focusing on, specifically if all the everyone listening to our conversation and everyone in our networks start doing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, procurement is very aptly positioned to connect the dots across the entire organization and even outside the organization.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, TR, for the wonderful conversation. And to our listeners, stay tuned for the next episode.
Thank you.